The wedding that changed everything. The grand hall shimmered under thousands of tiny golden lights. Guests whispered and smiled, the sound of soft music filling the air. It was a perfect evening, the kind that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. But among the laughter and polished champagne glasses, one moment would soon silence everyone. A single hug that would stay in people's hearts forever. Keanu Reeves arrived quietly, as he always did. He didn't like attention, and even though everyone in the room knew who he was, he blended in like a shadow. He wore a simple black suit, nothing loud, no expensive flash, just the kind of calm elegance that always followed him. This wasn't his wedding. He was here for someone else, someone who had once been the most important part of his life, Sandra Bullock. Sandra looked radiant that evening. Her smile was soft, her eyes full of calm joy, but deep inside, something unspoken lived beneath her happiness. Years had passed since she and Keanu last worked together. They had shared laughter, friendship, and something deeper that neither of them ever dared to name. It wasn't love in words, it was love in silence. The ceremony began. The guests rose, the bride walked down the aisle, and the music swelled. Sandra's soon-to-be husband, a kind and talented man from outside the film world, looked at her as if she was the only person alive. Keanu smiled faintly. He was happy for her, or at least he wanted to believe he was. As the vows began, the room grew still. Sandra's voice shook slightly when she spoke. She said words about love, patience, and forgiveness, words that somehow seemed to touch Keanu more than anyone else. He remembered the years of friendship they had shared, the jokes, the quiet moments on set, the late-night talks about life and pain and healing. She had always been someone who carried light, even when her own heart was heavy. When the ceremony ended, applause filled the hall. The guests moved toward the reception area, and for a moment, Keanu thought about leaving quietly. But before he could, Sandra saw him. Their eyes met across the crowd. For a second, it felt like time itself stopped. Her expression softened as she began to walk toward him. People watched in quiet curiosity. The bride, still glowing, approached Keanu slowly. He stood still, his hands in his pockets, unsure of what to say. Then, without a word, she stepped closer and wrapped her arms around him. The room went silent, not out of confusion or shock, but because everyone could feel what that hug carried. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't awkward. It was something deeper, two souls who had been through years of distance, fame, and change, finding peace in one silent embrace. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, returning the hug gently. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel everything he had hidden, the admiration, the pain, the gratitude, and the quiet wish that life had been different. Sandra whispered softly, "Thank you for coming. You don't know what it means to me." He smiled faintly and replied, "You don't have to thank me. You deserve all of this. I just wanted to see you happy." But deep inside, he could feel something shifting, a strange heaviness, like destiny had paused for a reason. And while the music started again, Keanu noticed a man near the corner watching him closely. The man wasn't smiling. He looked tense, almost troubled. Sandra followed Keanu's gaze, then whispered, "Don't worry about him. I'll explain later." Her words lingered. That simple promise, "I'll explain later," was the beginning of everything that would follow, because what started as a hug at a wedding would soon uncover secrets neither of them expected. Secrets about loyalty, forgiveness, and a truth that would test both their hearts. The man in the Keanu's wedding continued with laughter, music, and clinking glasses, but Keanu's mind was no longer in the celebration. That man in the corner, the one who didn't smile, stayed in his thoughts. He wasn't just a random guest. There was something sharp in his eyes, something watchful. Keanu had spent years learning to trust his instincts, and right now, they told him that something about tonight wasn't right. Sandra, however, seemed calm on the surface. She moved gracefully through the crowd, greeting guests, hugging old friends, and thanking everyone for being there. Yet every now and then, she looked back toward the same corner, as if silently checking that the man was still there. Keanu noticed it. He could read her easily. She was good at pretending everything was fine, but her eyes always told the truth. When she finally had a moment alone, Keanu walked up to her near the garden area where fairy lights danced above their heads. "Who is he?" he asked quietly. She looked at him, her expression soft but uneasy. "Someone I used to know," she said. "It's complicated." Keanu frowned slightly. "Complicated how?" Sandra hesitated. "He's an old friend of my fiancée. They worked together before, but lately he's been acting strange, sending messages, asking questions about me. I told my husband not to worry, but I don't know. It feels off." Keanu looked toward the man again. He was talking to someone now, his eyes occasionally flicking toward Sandra. "Did you tell anyone else?" Keanu asked. "No," she whispered. "I didn't want to make a scene. This day is supposed to be happy." Keanu's voice stayed calm, but there was firmness in his tone. "You did the right thing. I'll stay for a while." As the night deepened, the crowd grew louder, and the man in the corner finally disappeared from sight. For a brief moment, Sandra seemed to relax, laughing with her guests again. Keanu watched her, quietly admiring how she carried herself, strong, kind, humble, never letting fear show. It was one of the many things he had always respected about her. But then, just as the band started a slow song, a waiter hurried toward Sandra and handed her a small folded note. She opened it quickly, and her expression changed. Her smile faded. Keanu stepped closer. "What is it?" he asked. She handed him the note. It said, "You shouldn't have ignored me. Meet me at the back gate in 10 minutes, or everyone will know your secret." Keanu's eyes darkened. "What secret?" he asked softly. Sandra single quotes S voice trembled. "I don't know what he's talking about, but I think he means something from the past. Before I met my husband." She looked at him helplessly. "Keanu, I don't want to cause trouble." He shook his head. "You're not causing trouble. Someone else is. And if this man is threatening you, we'll face him together." 10 minutes later, they walked quietly toward the back gate of the venue. The lights grew dimmer as they moved away from the crowd. The music faded behind them. The night air was cool, carrying a faint scent of flowers and rain. The man was already there, standing under a tree, waiting. When he saw them, he smirked. "I told you to come alone, Sandra," he said. "But of course you brought your hero." Keanu's voice was calm but strong. "You've got something to say. Say it here." The man stepped forward. "Fine," he said bitterly. "You think she's perfect, don't you? America's sweetheart. But she's hiding something, Keanu. Something that could ruin her." Sandra took a step back, her face pale. "You're lying," she said, but her voice wasn't as firm as before. The man smirked again and reached into his jacket. Keanu instantly moved in front of Sandra, ready to protect her. But the man only pulled out an envelope. "Then explain this," he said. "You'll both want to see it." He dropped the envelope at their feet and walked away, his figure disappearing into the shadows. Keanu picked it up and looked at Sandra. Her hands were shaking. "Should we open it?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Yes." He tore it open carefully. Inside were a few photographs and a letter. One photo showed Sandra years ago, standing beside a man who wasn't her fiancé, a man who looked strangely familiar. The letter was short but cruel. "Truth doesn't hide behind smiles. Tell him before I do." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. "That man, he's from my past, Keanu. But there's more you don't know." Keanu placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then tell me. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." She looked up at him, her voice trembling. "That man, he wasn't just anyone. He was the reason I disappeared from the spotlight years ago. And he's not supposed to be alive." The past she buried. The night air grew colder, and Sandra's words hung heavy between them. Keanu looked at her, trying to understand what she meant. "Not supposed to be alive," he repeated quietly. Sandra took a deep breath. Her hands trembled as she held the letter. "Years ago," she began softly, "before I took a break from acting, I was in a relationship with a man named Ryan. He was charming at first, kind, supportive. But over time, he changed. He became controlling, jealous, and angry. I tried to end it, but he wouldn't let me go. One night, things got bad. He chased me, and his car went off the road. The police said he didn't survive." Keanu listened carefully, his face calm but his eyes full of concern. "And now he's back." She nodded slowly. "That's what I thought when I saw him tonight. But it can't be. I went to his funeral, Keanu. I saw his mother cry. I saw the grave. Keanu's mind raced. He had seen many strange things in his life, but this felt different, darker. If he's really alive, he's been watching you, he said. Maybe planning this for years. Sandra's eyes filled with tears. I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to move on. My new life, my husband, this wedding. I didn't want the past to ruin it. But now it's here, right in front of me. Keanu stepped closer, his voice gentle. You're not alone. We'll figure out what's true. We'll find out who's behind this. Sandra nodded, trying to steady her breathing. Thank you, she whispered. You always know how to stay calm when everything feels like it's falling apart. Keanu gave her a faint smile. It's just practice. Life has tested me enough. They walked back toward the hall quietly. The wedding was still going on. Laughter, music, and joy surrounded them. But it felt like another world now. Sandra tried to act normal for her guests, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Keanu stayed nearby, watching carefully, his instincts sharp. Later that night, after the guests began to leave, Keanu noticed a waiter slip something into Sandra's handbag. He moved quickly, catching the man's wrist. The waiter froze, then tried to pull away. What's this? Keanu demanded. The man stammered. I was just told to give it to her. By who? Someone outside. He said it was private. Keanu took the small object, a folded note once again. Sandra came over, her face pale. Not another one, she whispered. He handed it to her. She opened it, and her eyes widened. He wants to meet tomorrow, she said shakily, at the old church outside the city. He says if I don't come, he'll show everything to the press. Keanu frowned. He's playing a game. But if we don't go, he'll keep pushing. And if we do, it could be dangerous. Sandra looked at him with desperation. What choice do I have? I can't let him destroy everything. Not now. Keanu hesitated. Then I'm going with you. No arguments. The next morning, the sky was gray and heavy with clouds. The city looked dull, the world quiet as they drove toward the old church. Sandra sat beside him, staring out the window. She was lost in memories, the early days of her career, the moments of joy, the pain she had buried. Keanu glanced at her and said softly, whatever happens, remember, your past doesn't define you. How you rise from it does. She looked at him, her eyes glistening. You always say the right thing, don't you? He smiled faintly. Only when it matters. They arrived at the church. It stood alone on a hill, its stone walls cracked and worn by time. The doors creaked as they pushed them open. The inside was dimly lit by candles, casting long shadows on the floor. And then, a voice echoed softly through the space. You came. They turned. A man stepped out from behind the altar. His face was half hidden by the dim light, but when he stepped closer, Sandra gasped. It was Ryan. Older, thinner, but unmistakably him. You're supposed to be dead, she whispered. He smiled coldly. So were we, Sandra, both of us. You buried me and walked away like nothing happened. Keanu stepped between them, his tone steady. Whatever you think she did, you don't get to threaten her. Ryan's expression hardened. You don't know the truth, Reeves. She's not who you think she is. Keanu's eyes narrowed. Then tell me. Ryan smiled faintly, his voice calm but sharp. She didn't just leave me that night. She took something from me, something I want back. Sandra's hands began to shake. Don't listen to him, she said quickly. He's lying. But Keanu noticed the fear in her eyes, the kind that only appears when truth and danger stand side by side. The secret she never told there inside the church felt heavy, like it carried the weight of everything that had ever gone wrong. Dust floated through the weak light that poured in from the broken windows. Keanu stood between Sandra and Ryan, his body tense but calm, his eyes sharp. He could feel the tension building like a storm about to break. Ryan smirked, his voice low and bitter. She took something from me, Keanu. The night of the accident, when the police said I died. She ran off with it. She made me disappear. Sandra shook her head quickly, her voice trembling. That's not true, Ryan. You were dangerous. You were hurting people. I had to leave. Ryan's expression hardened. You always twist things, don't you? Tell your version and let the world believe you're the victim. But tell me, Sandra, did you tell your new husband what you took from me? Keanu's voice cut through the air. Enough. Stop talking in riddles. What exactly did she take? Ryan's eyes flicked to Sandra. A file. A piece of truth that could destroy more than one person. It wasn't about me, it was about people in power. People who paid to hide things. She found it, and before I could stop her, she ran. That's why I crashed that night. And while everyone thought I was dead, I hid. I had to. Because if they knew I was alive, they'd kill me. Sandra's hands trembled. I didn't know what was in that file, she said weakly. I just wanted to escape. I thought it was just papers from your work. Keanu looked at her gently. What work? Her voice dropped to a whisper. He was connected to a production company that wasn't real. They used it as a cover to move money and people. I didn't know until it was too late. When I found the file, I ran. I was scared. Ryan stepped closer, his tone sharp. And now that file could expose everything. I need it back before someone else finds it. Keanu moved slightly, keeping himself between them. And what happens if she doesn't have it anymore? Ryan's jaw tightened. Then all of us are in danger. Because someone else already knows. The words hit like thunder. Sandra's eyes widened. What do you mean? Ryan looked around nervously. They found me 2 weeks ago. They said if I didn't get the file, they'd come for me and for anyone connected to me. That's why I came here. Not to hurt you, but to warn you. The sound of a car engine outside made them all turn. Keanu's instinct sharpened instantly. He motioned for them to stay quiet. Footsteps echoed outside, heavy and quick. Someone was coming. Sandra's single quotes S breath quickened. Keanu. She whispered. He gestured for her to move behind one of the pillars. Stay there. The old doors creaked open. 3 men entered dressed in dark suits, faces cold and serious. One of them spoke, his voice deep. We just want the file. Keanu's tone stayed calm. You're not getting anything. The man smirked. You're brave, Reeves, but this isn't your fight. Keanu's eyes didn't move. It is now. The men started to spread out, surrounding them. Ryan looked terrified, realizing his warning had come too late. Sandra gripped Keanu's arm, her voice shaking. What do we do? Keanu whispered. We move when I say so. Trust me. In one quick motion, he grabbed a piece of broken wood from the floor and threw it toward the back window, shattering the glass. The sudden noise startled the men. Now, he shouted. He pulled Sandra toward the side door while Ryan followed close behind. They ran out into the open field behind the church, the sound of footsteps chasing after them. The wind howled, carrying the smell of rain and dust. Keanu guided them toward a small path leading down to an abandoned road. Ryan gasped for breath. We can't outrun them forever, he said. We don't have to, Keanu replied. We just need to reach my car. They reached the road, and Keanu's car came into view. Just as they got close, one of the men caught up and shouted, Stop. A gunshot echoed. The bullet hit the ground near Keanu's feet. Sandra screamed, and Keanu turned, shielding her with his body. Ryan picked up a rock and threw it at the man's arm, knocking his aim off. Go, he yelled. Keanu pushed Sandra into the car and started the engine. Get in. Ryan jumped in the back, and they sped off, tires screeching against the road. For a few moments, no one spoke. Only the sound of the engine and Sandra's shaky breathing filled the silence. Finally, Keanu said, We're not safe yet, but I know someone who can help us. Sandra turned to him, her voice quiet but full of fear. Who? Keanu's eyes stayed on the road. Someone who knows the truth behind that file. Someone I thought I'd never have to call again. He pressed harder on the gas as the sky darkened above them, and Sandra realized that whatever came next wasn't just about her past anymore. It was about survival. The man who knew too much. The road was silent except for the sound of tires cutting through the rain. Dark clouds hung low, and the air smelled of thunder. Keanu kept his eyes fixed on the road, his hands steady on the wheel. Behind him, Sandra sat trembling, clutching the edge of her seat, while Ryan stared out the window, pale and restless. Where are we going? Sandra finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu's tone stayed calm. A friend. Someone who used to work in intelligence. He can help us figure out who's behind all this and what they want. Ryan shifted nervously. You think someone's pulling the strings? Keanu nodded. Too many moving parts. Threats, files, fake deaths. None of this happens by accident. They drove for another hour before stopping at a small cabin hidden in the woods. The place looked quiet, almost forgotten. Keanu stepped out first, scanning the area before knocking on the door. A tall man opened it, a few years older than Keanu, with tired eyes and a calm presence. "It's been a long time," he said. "Too long," Keanu replied. "We need help, Sam." Sam looked past Keanu at Sandra and Ryan. "Come in," he said simply. Inside, the cabin was filled with old books, maps, and a computer humming softly in the corner. Sandra sat near the fire, trying to steady her hands. Ryan stood close to the door. Still cautious, Sam poured tea and asked, "So, tell me everything." Keanu explained from the beginning: the wedding, the threats, the letters, the church, and the men who chased them. When he finished, Sam leaned back, thinking deeply. "I've heard rumors about this," he said quietly. "There's a network moving money through fake charities and media companies. They use familiar faces to distract the public while they hide their real work." Sandra frowned. "And I was one of those faces?" Sam nodded slowly. "Maybe not on purpose, but Ryan worked for one of them. When you ran away with that file, you exposed them without realizing it. That's why they wanted you gone." Ryan's voice cracked. "I didn't know what I was part of. I thought it was just business." Keanu looked at Sam. "Can we still find the file?" Sam turned to his computer and started typing fast. "If it's digital, yes. But if it's physical, it might already be hidden or destroyed." Minutes passed in silence, except for the sound of rain against the roof and the soft tapping of keys. Then, Sam froze. "Wait," he said. "I found something." He turned the screen toward them. On it was a record of an encrypted file stored in a private database, tagged with a name that made Sandra's heart stop. "Your husband," Sam said. "He's the one listed as the current holder of the data." Sandra's eyes widened. "No, that can't be. He didn't even know about this." Keanu's gaze darkened. "Maybe he did. Maybe that's why the wedding mattered so much." Ryan looked confused. "Are you saying he's part of it?" Sam nodded slightly. "It's possible. These people hide behind clean faces: businessmen, philanthropists, even spouses. The file might have been moved to him without Sandra realizing it." The realization hit her like a wave. The man she had just promised her life to could be the reason she was being hunted. Sandra buried her face in her hands. "I thought I finally found peace," she whispered. "And now, it feels like everything was a lie." Keanu knelt beside her. "You don't have to face it alone," he said softly. "We'll get the truth, no matter how deep it goes." Sam printed a sheet of paper and handed it to Keanu. "This is the location of the server holding the file," he said. "But it's not unguarded. They'll know the moment you access it." Keanu folded it and slipped it into his jacket. "Then we'll be careful." As they prepared to leave, lightning flashed outside, lighting up the room for a moment. When the light faded, Sandra noticed something: Ryan was gone. The door was slightly open, and rain blew in through the gap. Keanu rushed outside, shouting into the storm, "Ryan!" There was no answer, only the sound of rain hitting the leaves. Sam grabbed a small device from his desk. "He took my drive," he said. "The one with the server access." Keanu's face tightened. "He's going after it himself." Sandra looked terrified. "If he reaches them first, they'll kill him and then they'll come for us." Keanu turned to Sam. "Send me the coordinates. We end this tonight." The rain poured harder as Keanu and Sandra got back in the car. Thunder rolled across the dark sky. Neither of them spoke for a long time, until Sandra finally said softly, "Why are you helping me?" "Keanu, you could have walked away." He looked at her and said quietly, "Because sometimes life gives you a second chance to protect someone who once protected you." She stared at him, her eyes glistening with emotion. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the car, the silence between them was filled with something deeper: trust, pain, and an unspoken bond that neither time nor distance could break. As they drove into the night toward the truth, neither of them knew what waited ahead, only that by sunrise, someone's secret would finally be exposed. The last truth. Rain slowed as dawn began to break, painting the sky in shades of gray and blue. Keanu drove in silence, his eyes locked on the narrow road that wound through the forest. The storm had passed, but the tension inside the car hadn't. Sandra sat beside him, quiet and pale, her mind spinning with questions she didn't dare ask aloud. The address Sam gave them led to an old private estate on the edge of the city. High fences surrounded it, and faint lights glowed behind heavy glass windows. It looked abandoned from afar, but Keanu knew better. Places like this were never empty, they were watched. He stopped the car at a distance and turned to Sandra. "You stay here," he said firmly. "I'll go in, find the file, and get Ryan out if he's still alive." Sandra shook her head. "No, I'm coming with you. This started because of me. It needs to end with me." Keanu looked at her, saw the determination in her eyes, and knew there was no point arguing. "Stay close to me," he said softly. "No matter what happens." They moved through the rain-soaked grass, silent as shadows. The main gate was locked, but Keanu found a gap in the fence and led her through. Every step felt heavier, every sound louder. Then, as they reached the back door, Sandra froze. Through the window, she could see Ryan. He was standing in front of a large computer terminal, typing furiously. Keanu pushed the door open quietly. "Ryan," he called. Ryan turned, startled. His face was pale, his eyes full of exhaustion. "You shouldn't be here," he said quickly. "They're coming." "Who's coming?" Sandra asked, her voice trembling. Before Ryan could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hall. 3 men entered, the same ones who had chased them from the church. One of them smiled coldly. "Too late," he said. "You just walked into your own ending." Keanu stepped forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. "You don't have to do this." The man's expression didn't change. "We do. The file belongs to us," Ryan shouted. "You'll never get it," and hit a key on the keyboard. The computer screen flashed with a message, "Upload in progress." The men drew their weapons. Chaos erupted. Keanu grabbed Sandra and pulled her behind a desk as bullets shattered the glass. Ryan kept typing, his voice breaking. "It's uploading to every major news network. The world will know." One of the men fired again, hitting the computer tower. Sparks flew, the lights flickered, and the room filled with smoke. Keanu moved fast, tackling the nearest man and knocking him to the ground. Another lunged forward, but Sandra threw a metal tray at him, giving Keanu just enough time to grab his arm and twist it until the gun fell. Ryan fell to his knees, clutching his side. "It's done," he gasped. "It's all out there." Keanu knelt beside him, pressing his hand against the wound. "Stay with me," he said quietly. Ryan managed a faint smile. "I told you she wasn't who you thought she was," he whispered, "but I was wrong. She's better." And then his eyes went still. Sandra covered her mouth, her voice breaking. "No," she whispered. Keanu closed Ryan's eyes gently, his face full of quiet sorrow. "He tried to fix what he broke," he said softly. "Sometimes that's the bravest thing a person can do." Sirens wailed in the distance. Police and reporters arriving after the upload went public. The men who had attacked them were gone, their car tires screeching as they fled. Sandra stood beside the broken window, watching the sun rise over the city. The light touched her face, and for the first time in years, she felt free. The truth was out. The lies, the fear, the weight of the past, all gone. Keanu joined her quietly. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Sandra turned to him, her voice soft. "You saved me again." He shook his head gently. "No, you saved yourself. I just made sure you didn't forget who you were." She smiled faintly, tears in her eyes. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" Keanu looked out toward the horizon. "Because I've seen what happens when you say nothing. Silence is dangerous when truth is needed." They watched as the sun climbed higher, the world awakening to headlines about the corruption that had stayed hidden for years. Sandra's name appeared everywhere, but this time not as an actress, as a woman who stood up against fear. Later, after the police took their statements and the area cleared, Sandra turned to Keanu one last time. "When you hugged me at the wedding," she said softly, "you said you wanted to see me happy. I think this is what happiness feels like now." Keanu smiled gently. "Then it was worth everything." She hesitated, then hugged him again, the same quiet heartfelt embrace that had started it all. The wind moved softly round them, the morning light spilling across the wet ground this time. There was no crowd, no cameras, no whispers, just peace. As they stood there in the stillness, Sandra whispered, "Thank you for not letting me give up." Keanu smiled faintly and replied, "Thank you for reminding me why kindness still matters." The world moved on, but the memory of that morning stayed, a moment where truth won. Love endured, and two souls found peace in the silence after the storm.